Captain Jake Morrison sat in a command chair aboard the starship Endeavour, sipping his morning coffee and watching the stars drift past the main view screen. It had been a quiet week in deep space, with nothing but routine patrol duties and system checks to keep the crew busy. The ship hummed softly around him, a sound he had grown to love over his 10 years in command. The peaceful silence was broken by a sharp beep from the communications console. Lieutenant Ben Parker looked up from his station with surprise written across his face. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from outside our solar system." Jake set down his coffee cup and leaned forward. "Outside our system? Who's sending it?" "The signal is coming from the Galactic Entertainment Consortium, sir. They're broadcasting on all known frequencies." Jake felt his eyebrows rise. The Galactic Entertainment Consortium was one of the most powerful organizations in known space. They controlled most of the entertainment and media networks across dozens of star systems. For them to contact a human ship directly was unusual, to say the least. "Put it through, Ben." The main screen flickered and changed to show a tall, thin alien with purple skin and 4 arms. Its voice was smooth and cultured when it spoke. "Greetings, representatives of the human species. I am Director Call of the Galactic Entertainment Consortium. We have been observing your people since your recent entry into the galactic community. We find ourselves curious about your cultural offerings." Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth ship Endeavour. What exactly are you looking for, Director?" "We are always seeking new forms of entertainment for our vast audience networks. Your species is still quite new to galactic society, and we wish to see what unique talents you might possess. We are extending an invitation for one of your people to audition for our programs." The alien's tone was polite, but Jake could hear something else underneath it. Amusement, maybe, or perhaps condescension. He had dealt with enough alien species to recognize when they thought humans were inferior. "What kind of audition are we talking about?" Jake asked carefully. "Musical performance, primarily. We have reviewed some of your species' audio recordings that have made their way into galactic databases. While primitive, they show a certain rustic charm that might appeal to some audiences." Jake felt his jaw tighten at the word primitive, but he kept his expression neutral. Behind him, he heard someone clear their throat softly. He turned to see Lisa Rodriguez, the ship's communications officer and resident musician, standing near the back of the bridge. Lisa was a small woman with dark hair and bright eyes who could play half a dozen instruments with skill that amazed everyone on the ship. She had joined the crew 2 years ago, and her evening concerts in the ship's rec room had become a beloved tradition among the crew. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "I'd like to volunteer." "Lisa, you don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted, stepping forward. "This could be a chance to show the galaxy what human music is really about." Director Call's image seemed to focus on Lisa with interest. "Ah, a volunteer. Excellent. What is your primary instrument, human?" "Violin," Lisa replied, lifting her chin slightly, "and piano, and guitar, and several others." "Fascinating. Multiple instruments. How quaint." The alien's tone made it clear he didn't consider this impressive. "Very well. If you accept our invitation, you will be transported to our main entertainment complex on Station Harmony Prime. There you will audition before our panel of judges. If successful, you may be offered a contract." Jake looked at Lisa, searching her face for any sign of doubt. He found none. Her eyes were bright with determination and excitement. "What are the terms of this contract?" Jake asked. "That will depend entirely on the results of the audition." Director Call replied smoothly. "Some performers become featured acts across our networks. Others serve in more supporting roles. We find appropriate positions for all levels of talent." The way he said supporting roles made Jake's skin crawl, but Lisa nodded eagerly. "I accept," she said firmly. "When do we start?" "A transport will arrive at your coordinates within 24 hours. Please be ready." The alien smile revealed teeth that were far too sharp. "We look forward to seeing what your species considers entertainment." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake turned to Lisa, concern evident in his voice. Are you sure about this? Something about that alien rubbed me the wrong way. Lisa smiled and patted the violin case she always carried. Don't worry, Captain. I've got this. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do. Lisa stepped off the transport shuttle and into the most incredible sight she had ever seen. Harmony Prime stretched out before her like a city made of light and crystal. Towers spiraled up into the artificial sky, their surfaces covered in moving displays that showed performances from across the galaxy. Music drifted through the air from a dozen different sources, creating a strange but beautiful symphony. The transport pilot, a short green alien with too many eyes, gestured for her to follow. Entertainment complex is this way. Human, try not to get lost. Lisa clutched her violin case tighter and followed the pilot through crowds of beings she had never imagined. There were tall creatures that looked like walking trees, their bark-like skin glowing with soft patterns. Small, fuzzy beings with 6 legs scurried past, chattering in high-pitched voices. A group of floating jellyfish-like aliens drifted overhead, their transparent bodies pulsing with colored lights. The entertainment complex was even more impressive than the city outside. The building rose up like a mountain, its surface covered in screens showing performances and advertisements. Lisa could see dozens of different entrances, each marked with symbols she couldn't read. Audition candidates enter through door 7, the pilot said, pointing with one of his 4 arms. Good luck, human. You will need it. Lisa found door 7 and walked through into a waiting area that was bigger than her entire ship. The room was filled with the strangest collection of beings she had ever seen, and she realized these must be the other audition candidates. In one corner, a group of tall, thin aliens with silver skin were creating the most beautiful sounds Lisa had ever heard. They stood perfectly still, but crystalline chimes seemed to grow from their bodies, ringing out in perfect harmony. The music was complex and mathematical, each note precisely placed. Near the center of the room, a cluster of creatures that looked like giant sea slugs were putting on their own show. Their skin flashed with bright colors and rapid patterns, and Lisa realized the lights were their music. Other aliens gathered around them, watching the light show with obvious appreciation. On the far side of the room, a single massive being sat cross-legged on the floor. It looked almost human, but was at least 12 feet tall with gray skin and no hair. The air around it seemed to shimmer and bend, and Lisa felt a strange pressure in her ears. She realized it was creating music using gravity itself, making the very space around it vibrate with rhythm. Lisa found an empty chair and sat down, feeling very small and very human. Her violin case seemed pitiful compared to the incredible abilities she was seeing around her. She watched the other candidates practice, and each one was more impressive than the last. A door at the front of the room opened, and Director Call walked in. Behind him came 3 other aliens, each one stranger than the last. One looked like a living statue made of black stone, another resembled a floating brain surrounded by tentacles, and the third was so bright Lisa had to squint to look at it. Welcome, candidates, Director Call announced, his voice carrying easily across the large room. I am pleased to see such a diverse collection of talent gathered here today. You represent the finest musical traditions from across the galaxy. His eyes found Lisa in the crowd, and she saw that same amused smile from before. Some of you come from ancient civilizations with musical traditions spanning thousands of years. Others represent species that have evolved unique abilities to create sounds impossible for most beings to produce. He paused, looking directly at Lisa. And some of you come from newer additions to our galactic community. Several aliens turned to look at Lisa, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. She could see curiosity in some faces, but also something that looked like pity. The audition process is simple, Director Call continued. Each candidate will perform for 5 minutes. Our panel of judges will evaluate your performance based on technical skill, artistic merit, and entertainment value. Those who pass will be offered contracts with the Galactic Entertainment Consortium. The brain-like alien floated forward and spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. We should note that contracts vary widely based on the level of talent demonstrated. Our most gifted performers become featured artists across our networks. Others may find themselves in more specialized roles. The way it said, Specialized roles made Lisa's stomach twist, but she pushed down her nervousness. She had come here to show what humans could do, and she wasn't going to back down now. Auditions will begin in 1 hour, Director Call announced. Candidates will be called in alphabetical order by species designation. Humans will perform last. As the aliens began to disperse and prepare for their auditions, Lisa opened her violin case and began to tune her instrument. Around her, the other candidates continued their incredible displays of musical ability. But Lisa had something they didn't have, something she was sure they had never experienced before. She had a story to tell. Lisa sat in the waiting area and watched as one incredible performance followed another. The crystalline beings had gone first, creating music that sounded like wind chimes mixed with church bells. The judges had nodded approvingly and made notes on their strange devices. The slug-like creatures had put on a light show so beautiful that half the audience had tears in their eyes. Even the gravity-manipulating giant had earned respectful applause. Each performance was technically perfect. Each one showcased abilities that humans could never hope to match. Lisa felt her confidence shrinking with every act that took the stage. Human candidate. Director Call's voice called out, "You are next." Lisa stood up on shaky legs and walked toward the performance area. It was a circular stage in the center of the room, surrounded by seats filled with alien judges and observers. Bright light shone down from above, making everything feel hot and exposed. She stepped onto the stage and looked out at the audience. Director Call sat in the front row with the other 3 judges. The black stone creature had its arms crossed. The floating brain's tentacles writhed slowly. The bright being was so intense to look at that Lisa had to turn away. "State your name and species for the record," Director Call said. "Lisa Rodriguez, human from Earth," she replied, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "And what will you be performing for us today?" Lisa lifted her violin and bowed. "A piece called Canon in D, by a human composer named Pachobel. It was written over 300 years ago." She heard some quiet chuckling from the audience. 300 years was nothing to species that had been making music for thousands of years. "Very well," Director Call said with that same amused smile. "Please begin." Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought about home, about Earth, about all the humans who were depending on her to represent them well. Then she placed a violin under her chin and began to play. The first notes were simple and slow. The melody started soft and gentle, like a conversation between old friends. Lisa had played this piece hundreds of times, but never with so much at stake. She put everything she had into each note, every emotion she had ever felt. As the music continued, she began to add her own touches to the classical piece. She let the melody soar higher, added small runs and flourishes that spoke of joy and hope. She played passages that were sad and beautiful, that reminded her of missing home and the people she loved. The audience was completely quiet. Lisa opened her eyes and saw that many of the aliens were leaning forward in their seats. Some looked confused, as if they were hearing something they didn't understand but couldn't stop listening to. Lisa played the final movement with all the passion she could put into it. The music built to a crescendo that filled the entire room, then ended with a single, perfect note that seemed to hang in the air for a long moment. The silence that followed was complete. Lisa lowered her violin and looked out at the audience. She couldn't read the expressions on the alien faces, but something had changed. The amused superiority was gone from many of their eyes. Director Call was the first to speak. He cleared his throat and looked down at his notes. "That was adequate," he said slowly. "For a developing species, your technical skills are passable. The instrument itself is quite primitive, of course, but you seem to have mastered its limitations." The floating brain judge drifted forward. The performance lacked the mathematical precision we typically expect. The harmonic structures were simple, almost crude by galactic standards. Lisa felt her heart sink, but then the bright judge spoke. Its voice was like sunlight turned into sound. There was something else. It said, something I have not heard before. The technical elements were indeed simple, but there was an emotional component that seemed to transcend the basic musical structure. Director Call waved a dismissive hand. Emotion is easy to manufacture. Any performer can add dramatic flair to mask technical shortcomings. Perhaps, the bright judge replied, but this felt different, more genuine. Director Call made some final notes and looked up at Lisa. We have made our decision. While your performance was not suitable for our premium entertainment networks, we do see potential for a specialized role. He smiled that sharp-toothed smile again. We would like to offer you a contract as a novelty act. You would perform as comic relief between our main programs. Think of it as cultural curiosity, a dancing monkey, if you will, to amuse our audiences with primitive human sounds. Lisa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger, but she forced herself to nod. I accept. Excellent. Your first performance is tonight. Don't worry, we don't expect much. Just play your simple little songs and let the audience have a good laugh. As Lisa walked off the stage, she could hear whispered conversations starting up behind her. Some of the observers were still talking about her performance, and she caught fragments of words like unusual and different and strange. She might be starting as a dancing monkey, but something told her this was just the beginning. Lisa's new dressing room was smaller than a closet. It had a mirror, a chair, and barely enough space to open her violin case. The walls were thin, and she could hear the main acts practicing their elaborate performances in the rooms nearby. The crystalline beings were working on a new piece that sounded like 1,000 bells ringing in perfect order. The gravity manipulator was making the entire building shake with his bass notes. She had been performing as comic relief for 2 weeks now. Every night, she would walk onto the small side stage while the audience waited for the real entertainment to begin. She would play simple human songs while aliens laughed and pointed at the primitive little creature with her crude wooden instrument. But Lisa was learning. Between her performances, she would sneak around the complex and watch the other acts. She studied how the crystalline beings created their complex harmonies. She observed how the light-producing creatures synchronized their colors with mathematical precision. She even figured out how the gravity manipulator used space itself as an instrument. What she discovered surprised her. All of these incredible performances followed strict rules and formulas. The crystalline music was based on ancient mathematical equations. The light shows used patterns that have been perfected over thousands of years. Even the gravity music followed predetermined structures that never changed. Everything was technically perfect, but it was also predictable. Lisa began to understand why the bright judge had called her music different. The alien performers were playing what they were supposed to play, following traditions that stretched back centuries. But Lisa was playing what she felt. Tonight was different from the others. As Lisa prepared for her performance, she noticed that the main theater was only half full. She asked one of the stage hands, a small furry creature with friendly eyes, what was happening. Big show on Zeta Station tonight. The creature explained. New human performer. They're doing something strange. Everyone wants to see what it is. Lisa felt her heart skip. Another human performer? What kind of strange? They say the human is mixing different species' music together, making something new, very controversial. The creature lowered its voice. Some say it is better than the traditional acts. Lisa's mind raced. Someone else was trying to blend galactic music styles. She wondered if they had learned the same things she had about the rigid formulas and rules. That night, Lisa took the stage for her usual 5-minute comedy slot. The audience barely looked up from their conversations. She was just background noise, something to fill time while they waited for the real show. But instead of playing her usual simple melodies, Lisa tried something new. She started with a human folk song, something soft and familiar. Then, slowly, she began to weave in elements she had learned from watching the other acts. She added the mathematical precision of the crystalline beings, but she kept the emotion of the original melody. She incorporated the rhythmic patterns of the gravity music, but she made them serve the story her violin was telling. She even tried to imitate some of the color patterns from the light shows, translating them into rising and falling notes. The result was unlike anything that had ever been heard in the complex. It was technically complex like the alien music, but it had something the traditional performances lacked. It had heart. The audience slowly began to quiet down. Conversation stopped. Beings turned to look at the small human on the side stage. Lisa closed her eyes and let the music flow through her, creating something that was part human and part galactic, but entirely new. When she finished, the silence lasted for several long seconds. Then, from somewhere in the back, she heard slow clapping. It was joined by another, then another. Soon, half the audience was applauding. Director Call appeared at the side of the stage, his face twisted with anger. "What was that?" he demanded in a harsh whisper. "Music," Lisa replied simply. "That was not what you were hired to play. You're supposed to be comic relief, not whatever that was." Lisa looked out at the audience, many of whom were still watching her even though the main act had begun. Maybe they want something different. They want what we tell them to want, Director Call snapped. "You will stick to your simple human songs from now on, or your contract will be terminated." Lisa nodded, but her mind was already working. She had felt something shift in that audience tonight. They had heard something new, something that spoke to them in a way the traditional performances didn't. As she packed up her violin, the small furry stage hand appeared at her elbow. "That was beautiful," it whispered. "I have never heard anything like it." "Thank you," Lisa replied. "There are others who think like you," the creature continued, looking around nervously. "Others who want to try new things. We meet sometimes, in quiet places. Would you like to come?" Lisa looked at the creature's hopeful face and made her decision. Yes, I would like that very much. Change was coming to the galaxy's entertainment industry, and it was starting with a small human and her violin. Lisa followed the small furry creature through a maze of back corridors and service tunnels beneath the entertainment complex. The creature, who had told her his name was Pip, moved quickly through the dark passages, his 6 legs making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. "Where are we going?" Lisa whispered, clutching her violin case tightly. "Safe place," Pip replied. "Others waiting. Others who heard your music tonight." They descended deeper into the station's underground levels, past humming machinery and glowing pipes. Finally, Pip stopped at a heavy door marked with symbols Lisa couldn't read. He pressed a small hand against a scanner, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a room that looked like it had been forgotten by the station's builders. Old equipment was stacked in corners, and the lighting was dim and uneven, but it wasn't empty. About 20 beings sat in a rough circle in the center of the room, and Lisa recognized some of them. There was one of the crystalline beings, but this one's body was duller than the others, with small cracks running through its surface. A slug-like creature sat nearby, but its bioluminescent patches flickered weakly and irregularly. Lisa saw what looked like a young gravity manipulator, much smaller than the one she had seen performing, sitting cross-legged with its head down. "Welcome," said a voice from the shadows. A tall, thin alien stepped forward, and Lisa realized it was one of the tree-like beings she had seen in the city. But this one's bark was scarred and its glowing patterns were dim. "I am Branch," the creature said. "We are the ones who don't fit the mold." Lisa looked around the room with growing understanding. "You're all performers who didn't make it." "Not exactly," Branch replied. "Some of us were once featured acts. Others never got past the audition stage. But we all have one thing in common. We want to create something new, something different from the ancient formulas." The cracked crystalline being spoke up, its voice like broken chimes. "I tried to add improvisation to my music. The judges said I was corrupting a perfect art form." The flickering slug creature's lights pulsed sadly. "I wanted to tell stories with my colors, not just display pretty patterns." They called it primitive and emotional. Lisa felt a wave of sympathy for these outcasts. They had been rejected for the same reasons she had been dismissed as a novelty act. "But something is changing," Branch continued. "Ever since you performed that new style of music tonight, people have been talking, not just here on Harmony Prime, but across the galaxy." Pip scurried over to a battered computer terminal and activated a holographic display. Images and text in dozens of alien languages scrolled past, but Lisa could see video clips of her performance playing on repeat. "Someone recorded your music tonight," Pip explained excitedly. "They posted it on the galactic net. Look at the response." Lisa watched in amazement as the view counters climbed higher and higher. Comments were pouring in from beings across the galaxy, many in languages she couldn't read. but the emotional responses were clear. Some were confused, some were angry, but many more were excited and curious. "They want more," Branch said. "Beings everywhere are asking who the human is, and when she will perform again." The young gravity manipulator looked up for the first time. "Director Call has banned all discussion of your performance." He sent out orders to all his venues. No one is allowed to play recordings of it. "That just made people want to hear more," the slug creature added, its lights flickering with what Lisa realized was amusement. Branch moved closer to Lisa. "We have been meeting here for months, sharing ideas and techniques, but we never had the courage to perform for real audiences. You showed us that it's possible to break the rules and create something beautiful. What are you suggesting?" Lisa asked, though she thought she already knew. "A performance," Branch said. "Not in one of their official venues, but somewhere they can't control. Somewhere we can show the galaxy what music can really be when it comes from the heart instead of from a formula book." Pip bounced excitedly on his 6 legs. "I know places. Hidden venues, underground clubs. Places where beings go when they want something different from the official entertainment." The cracked crystalline being chimed softly. "I have been working on new compositions. Music that tells the story of my people's struggles, not just their mathematical achievements." The slug creature's lights began to pulse in complex patterns. "I have stories to tell about loneliness and hope and the search for belonging." Lisa felt excitement building in her chest. These weren't just outcasts and rejects. These were artists with something real to say. "When do we start?" Branch's bark patterns glowed brighter than she had seen before. "There's an underground venue on level 47. It's small, but word travels fast in the lower levels. If we can put on a show there, recordings will spread across the galaxy before the consortium can stop them." And then, Lisa asked, "Then we change everything," Branch replied. "The galaxy has been listening to the same old music for thousands of years. It's time they heard something new, something real." Lisa looked around the room at the hopeful faces of her new allies. Each one had been rejected by the system for wanting to create something meaningful. But together, they might have the power to transform galactic culture forever. "Let's do it," she said, and the room erupted in cheers, chimes, light displays, and gravitational waves of joy. The underground venue on level 47 was nothing like the grand theaters above. It was a converted storage room with low ceilings and flickering lights. Old cargo containers had been arranged as seats, and the stage was just a raised platform made from metal grating. But it was packed with beings who had never been welcome in the official entertainment halls. Lisa stood backstage with her new friends, her heart pounding with nervous excitement. Through a gap in the makeshift curtain, she could see the audience. There were maintenance workers, cargo handlers, and service staff from dozens of different species. These were the beings who kept the station running, but were never invited to the fancy shows upstairs. "Are you ready?" Branch asked, his bark patterns glowing with anticipation. Lisa nodded and picked up her violin. "Let's show them what real music sounds like." The show began with the young gravity manipulator, who had chosen the name Echo for his performance, instead of the rigid mathematical patterns that traditional gravity music required. Echo created something that felt like a heartbeat. The air around him pulsed with rhythm that made everyone in the audience sway together. Next came the cracked crystalline being, who called herself Harmony. Her broken body created sounds that were imperfect but beautiful, like wind chimes in a gentle storm. She sang about the pain of being different and the joy of finding others who understood. The slug creature, who went by Spectrum, painted the room with colors that told stories. Her lights showed the loneliness of being the only one of her kind on the station, then the happiness of finding friendship in unexpected places. The audience watched in wonder as emotions they had never seen before danced across the walls. Then it was Lisa's turn. She walked onto the small stage and looked out at the faces in the crowd. These weren't the bored, superior aliens from the official venues. These were beings who worked hard, who struggled, who understood what it meant to be overlooked and undervalued. "This song is for everyone who has ever been told they weren't good enough," Lisa said, raising her violin. She began to play, and the music that came from her instrument was unlike anything she had ever created before. It started with a simple human melody, something her grandmother had taught her years ago. But as she played, She began to weave in everything she had learned from her friends. She added Echo's heartbeat rhythms, making the music pulse with life. She incorporated harmony's broken beauty, letting imperfect notes tell the story of survival and growth. She painted with sound the way spectrum painted with light, creating colors that spoke of hope and determination. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every note. Lisa could see tears in some eyes, smiles on others. This was what music was supposed to do. It was supposed to make people feel, to connect them to something larger than themselves. As Lisa played, something magical happened. Branch began to add his own contribution, his bark patterns creating a rhythm that complemented her melody. Harmony joined in with soft chimes that danced around the main tune. Spectrum's lights began to pulse in time with the music, and Echo's gravitational waves added depth that could be felt in the chest. Other performers from the audience began to join in. A being with 4 arms started clapping a complex rhythm. A creature with a voice like thunder hummed along. Soon, the entire room was filled with music that had never existed before, created by beings who had never been allowed to truly express themselves. The performance lasted for over an hour, with different beings taking turns to lead while others supported. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. It was everything that the official entertainment industry was not. When it finally ended, the silence lasted for a long moment. Then the applause began, and it didn't stop for 5 minutes. Beings were cheering, crying, and hugging each other. They had witnessed something that would change their lives forever. But their celebration was cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps on the metal stairs. The door burst open, and Director Call strode in with a team of security guard behind him. "This illegal gathering is now terminated," he announced, his voice echoing through the small space. "All participants will be detained for questioning." The audience began to panic, but Lisa stepped forward. "Wait," she called out. "This isn't over." Director Call's eyes narrowed. "Your contract is terminated. Human, you have violated every term of our agreement." "Good," Lisa replied, surprising everyone, including herself. "I don't want to be your dancing monkey anymore. You have no idea what you started." Director Call snarled. "This little rebellion of yours will be crushed before it spreads any further." But Branch stepped up beside Lisa, his patterns glowing brighter than ever. "Too late," he said, pointing to the recording devices that had been hidden throughout the room. Everything was broadcast live across the galactic net. Millions of beings just watched what real music looks like. Director Call's face went pale as he realized what had happened. The revolution had already begun, and there was no way to stop it now. 3 months later, Lisa stood on the observation deck of Harmony Prime and watched the most incredible sight she had ever seen. Ships were arriving from every corner of the galaxy, each one carrying musicians who had seen the underground concert broadcasts and wanted to learn this new style of music. The Galactic Entertainment Consortium's monopoly had crumbled overnight. When the underground performance had been broadcast live, billions of beings across the galaxy had watched in amazement. They had never heard music that made them feel so much, that spoke to their hearts instead of just impressing their minds. Within days, traditional concert halls were sitting empty, while underground venues were packed beyond capacity. Beings who had never thought of themselves as musicians were picking up instruments and trying to create their own emotional compositions. The rigid formulas and ancient traditions that had dominated galactic culture for thousands of years were being abandoned in favor of music that came from the soul. Director Call had tried everything to stop the movement. He had threatened legal action, attempted to block broadcasts, and even tried to have Lisa and her friends arrested. But it was too late. The spark had been lit, and it was spreading faster than anyone could control. Lisa heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Branch approaching. His bark patterns were brighter than ever, and she could see joy radiating from every part of his being. "The council meeting just ended," he said. "It's official. The Galactic Entertainment Consortium has agreed to restructure completely. Director Call has been removed from his position." Lisa felt a surge of satisfaction. "What happens now?" "They want you to head the new cultural exchange program," Branch replied. "You would be responsible for teaching this new style of music throughout a galaxy and helping different species learn to collaborate." Lisa looked out at the ships arriving in the harbor. She could see beings from dozens of different worlds, all coming together because of music. Ambassador of Interstellar Arts, she said softly. I like the sound of that. There's more, Branch continued. Captain Morrison and your crew from the Endeavor are here. They want to see you. Lisa's heart leaped. She hadn't spoken to her friends since this whole adventure began. She followed Branch through the station to the docking bay, where she found Captain Morrison waiting with a huge smile on his face. Lisa, he called out, wrapping her in a bear hug. We've been watching the news broadcasts. The whole galaxy is talking about what you've done. I had help, Lisa said, gesturing to Branch and the other friends who had gathered around them. This wasn't something I could have done alone. Lieutenant Parker stepped forward, shaking his head in amazement. Do you realize what you've accomplished? You've changed the entire galactic entertainment industry. There are music schools opening on every planet, teaching this new collaborative style. Lisa smiled. It's not really new. It's just honest. Music should bring people together, not divide them into categories of good enough and not good enough. Captain Morrison looked serious for a moment. The Earth government has been in contact with us. They want to know if you're coming home. Lisa looked around at her new friends, at the bustling station full of beings from across the galaxy who were all working together to create something beautiful. Then she looked up at the viewports, where more ships were arriving every hour. This is home now, she said. There's too much work to do here. Too many people to teach, too many songs to write. Harmony chimed softly nearby. We have requests from over 200 worlds for cultural exchange programs. Everyone wants to learn how to make music that tells stories. Spectrum's lights pulse with excitement, and the underground venues are becoming official performance halls. No more hiding in storage rooms. Echo, the young gravity manipulator, grinned. The best part is that there are no more rules about who can and can't be a musician. Anyone who has something to say can learn to express it. Captain Morrison nodded with understanding. Well, if you ever need anything, you know how to reach us. Earth is proud of what you've accomplished. As Lisa watched her old crew leave to return to their ship, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had come to Galaxy as a dancing monkey, a novelty act to amuse audiences between real performances. But she had proven that sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected places. The Galaxy had learned that music wasn't about technical perfection or following ancient rules. It was about connection, emotion, and the shared experience of being alive in a vast universe. Every species had something beautiful to contribute to the cosmic symphony, and Lisa had helped them find their voices. She picked up her violin and began to play a simple melody. Within moments, Branch had joined in with his rhythmic bark patterns. Harmony added her crystalline chimes, and Spectrum painted the air with dancing lights. All around the observation deck, other beings began to add their own voices to the song. It was imperfect and chaotic and absolutely beautiful. It was the sound of the galaxy learning to sing together.